And welcome back to the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis, and next to me, as always, is my beautiful co-host, Laraib. And we are finally back, Laraib. It's been a long off season, but we are here for the 2024-2025 NFL season, back in our former glory and better than ever. Super excited to be back with you here, Laraib.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, it's always feels like an eternity from when the season ends to when it starts the next year, but we have finally made it now. Kick off here in a short few weeks, and we're looking at another exciting season of football, Lewis.
And to kick off this season and this episode, we have a lot for you in this episode. Storylines for this season that we're the most excited for. But to just some things first, we will be back, doing our normal routine. When the season starts, we'll be doing our 2 episodes a week, reactions and predictions for each NFL week. We'll be doing some stuff in the intermediary. Big thing this year where we want a lot of guests, a lot of people to come on with us, talk some football, chop it up. We're always excited to have fun NFL conversations. And another thing we got to bring up is I'm not wearing this jersey for nothing. I won the predictions in the playoffs last year. This would be 2 years in a row, or 2 times in a row. Um, Larab, it was the Rams the last time when you got me. So how are we going to change it up this year?
This year, I don't know. We have to do something crazy now. Super Bowl is in Louisiana, in Nolens. So we'll definitely have to see something about that. And then one more quick note, this is the start of the season. We got a long 18, 20 weeks ahead of us. And so if you want us to do something, if you have any comments, any reactions, or any specific takes you would like us to have, go ahead and leave them down in the comment section, right? If you want any new segments or anything like that, this is the time to get it in the comments right now, and then we'll do our best to please you guys on that.
Yes, we are open to any and all new ideas. So please let us know either in the comments or hit one of us up individually, and we'll be really excited to bring any new life into the show that we can, because we're always changing, we're always improving, because we just love, at the end of the day, talk about football, and the best way we can do it is with y'all's input. So we appreciate that, Larab. All right, but let's go ahead and get started with this NFL season. And this episode, we each picked out three of the biggest storylines that we're looking at to start this NFL season. What will define this NFL year? And I know I'm wearing the jersey, Laura, but I think it starts where it ended last year, and that is with the Kansas City Chiefs looking to become the first NFL team to have a three-peat since the 67 Packers with Vince Lombardi as the head coach. And, this team, we thought last season going into, the postseason that they were going to get got, that this was their time. The receivers weren't really that great. The offense wasn't looking sharp at all. They suffered some really ugly losses late in the season, and they just didn't look themselves. But then, 5 weeks later, second week of February, they're holding up that Lombardi trophy as I told you they would. But here we are again. It's been a long off season. No one in dang near 60 years has even come close to a three-peat. The closest we came was with the Belichick Brady teams, and they could never really just get over that extra hump of just these long seasons. And the NFL has as much parity as it's ever had before, Larab. So if I was to ask you, just keeping it with the Chiefs, what is their biggest hurdle to not reach or win a third Super Bowl this year?
I think it has to be age, Lewis, and I think that all points to Travis Kelce. Now he's turning 35 years old. You've tried to predict this the last couple of seasons. Is this the year he finally gets hurt? Is this the year he finally gets hurt? I think this. I don't want to jinx it, but it's kind of trending towards that way. And I don't want to jinx anybody. I'm knocking on wood here, but it kind of feels like Mahomes is also due for, that ACL big injury that kind of just knocks him out. You're talking about the Patriots team where they could just never get over the hump. One of those seasons was Tom Brady tearing his ACL, and that was that. And so, like you said, these seasons are long. When you're playing an extra month for 2 years in a row, that starts to add up. Playing all the way through February, and so I don't want to jinx anybody. I don't want to say anything crazy like, oh, I'm praying on him getting hurt. But I think age is definitely a factor when you have guys like Travis Kelce getting older, Chris Jones getting older, and then injury bug can always derail any team.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at this team on paper, Laraib. I think it's safe to say they are a better team than they were last year. Now, their biggest loss, losing L'Jarius Sneed, who was such a huge part of that secondary, is a big loss. But you keep Chris Jones, which is a big question mark entering this offseason. You still have Trent McDuffie in the back. You did lose Willie Gay, who was a big part of your defense. Now he's a New Orleans Saint, so we're happy about that. But you still have the foundational pieces over there on the defensive side. You kept the defensive coordinator, whose name is eluding me at the moment,
Steve Spagnuolo.
Steve Spagnuolo. Thank you. And so the defense, I think, the young defensive piece, the guys in the draft who they just kept developing and developing, they were the third youngest defense in all of football last season, and they got better as the year progressed on. And you saw the guys like George Karlaftis making big plays in the playoffs, and just guys springing up out of nowhere to make really big plays. I think they draft really well, and they brought in some new guys this offseason as well to kind of keep that defense young and fresh to where at the end of the season, those guys are still on their A game. And in the offense, Travis Kelce is older. Yes, that is concern. But on paper, as it stands now, he is still the Travis Kelce that we saw at the end of last season. He wasn't prime Kelce, but super reliable, always consistent for you, and just gets open in huge plays. You have that. You have Hall of Famer Travis Kelce. You add in Rashee Rice, or you have Rashee Rice, who as of now, no suspension news has come in, and it seems like after a very strong first season, he's going to have another strong second season. And then you add in a Xavier Worthy out of Texas, a speedster who's already making flashy plays in the preseason. You bring in a Hollywood Brown who did get injured early, so maybe what you were alluding to, the injury bug, could be happening, but just another weapon versus Marquez Valdez-Scantling from last year, Sky Moore. You're just getting more and more talent on the outside. But ultimately, Laraib, and you still have Isaiah Pacheco, who, he's getting older, but he's still a young guy. This is the prime of running backs, which is he is in right now. But ultimately, Laraib, they still have Patrick Mahomes. And the fact that we're having to grasp for straws like he's due to get injured just shows how there's that feeling of inevitability with Patrick Mahomes when he's your quarterback, where when we get to the playoffs and we're picking these games, and they were underdogs in the second round and the conference finals and in the Super Bowl, and he just found a way to keep the ship going, to get everyone in control, and found ways to win, because that's what he does, and that's what Andy Reid does. So I guess my biggest concern is complacency, is going into this third year, you still have that drive. Other teams who have been so close, but so far, they are just so hungry to knock you down and to take your place. So what is keeping you motivated going into this third year? Just the fact that let's go for a third? Well, yeah, that's all great, but you won the last two. Like, you need to keep that spirit. So the early schedule is going to be a big deal for them because they have some heavy hitters coming out of the gate. Home for Baltimore, home for Cincinnati. If you still are feeling happy and fat, from last season, those two games could knock you right in the ass. And, oh, shoot, the season has started, which could argue be a good thing for them. So you're playing playoff level opponents right out of the gate. So right after those 2 weeks, you are now locked in for the season, because it's only going to get easier opponents, but you'll have that locked in mindset. So I'm optimistic that this Chiefs team will make the playoffs again. I think we can both agree on that. And once we get to the dance, we'll see how we're looking. But I think the odds they three-peat are pretty solid, Laraib.
Yeah, let's not get it twisted here. They are still the team to beat in the AFC. You look at a team like the Ravens, who lose a lot, 3 stars on the offensive line, and they bring in 100-year-old Derrick Henry. That doesn't really give me that angst that they're going to beat this Chiefs team. You look at Josh Allen. I'm really projecting a really good year for Josh Allen here. I think he is one of the best quarterbacks, top 3 in my opinion, in the NFL. And even with losing Stephon Diggs, I think he's going to find a way to win games and still win that AFC East. But there still has to be, I the past 2 seasons while you're wearing that Chiefs jersey, Lewis, and I'm not wearing a Christian McCaffrey jersey right now is because of that Chiefs team's pedigree. And now I'm not going to be the person third year in a row to pick against them. I think they are still the team to beat, and no one else, until someone else can do it, I can't pick against them this year.
All right. Well, you want to go ahead with your next storyline, Laraib?
Yes, Lewis. Now, people are going to question me on this, but I really am interested in what is going to happen in the AFC South this year. Of course, Anthony Richardson coming back from injury, and a lot of people are high on this Colts team, maybe saying they can win 12 games this year with Shane Steichen. And of course, the Texans with CJ Stroud in year 2. But a team that I really want to focus on, Lewis, is the Tennessee Titans with Will Levis and everything that
Get
they've
out of
done
here.
this offseason. I think Brian Callahan is a dark horse candidate for Coach of the Year, and I think this Titans team is a playoff dark horse sleeper. You think about the offensive weapons that they brought in Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd, along with DeAndre Hopkins that they had. Now, he's a little banged up. Of course, he's also another year older, but I think that's a great trio for Will Levis to work with. Now, we can talk about Tony Pollard and how he may or may not be washed, but him in a 2 running back committee with him and Tajay Spears, I think they have a ability to do some good work over there in Tennessee. And then they draft the offensive lineman out of Alabama, Latham, I believe is his
Yeah,
name.
JC Latham.
And then in the secondary, hear me out, Quandre Diggs, Jamal Adams, L'Jarius Sneed, who they got from trade, D'Amico Autry, Jeffrey Simmons on that defensive line. I think they have the pieces in place to be sneakily good this year. And then don't count out the Jacksonville Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence. I think they might lose this division, and the Tennessee Titans might win this one.
Okay, well, let's go ahead. If we're talking AFC South, we're going to talk about the team that's actually going to win it, and that's going to be what I thought was your Houston Texans, Laraib,
My
because
Houston Texans, 5 minutes away from the stadium.
on paper, the team who won the division last year won a playoff game with a rookie quarterback in CJ Stroud, only upgraded tenfold. The only team ever in NFL history in one offseason to add a guy with over 1,000 rushing yards, a guy with over 1,000 receiving yards, and a guy with over 10 sacks. So you had Danielle Hunter, who had 16 sacks last year. You go ahead and add Stephon Diggs, and you add Joe Mini Mixon to the backfield. I mean, and you already have the young guys that you've been developing, Tank Dell, Nico Collins on the outside. You have a solid foundation offensive line. Laramie Tunsil, probably the best left tackle in all of football. And then on the defensive side, you have studs in all 3 levels of the defense. Derek Stingley, who I always thought going into that draft, he was the best cornerback over Sauce Gardner. And I still think he's a better cornerback than Sauce Gardner. So you have that stud on the back end. You bring in Danielle Hunter along with Jonathan Greenard, who had 10 plus sacks last year for D'Amico Ryans in that group, and just an overall solid group defensively, who I think is just only going to get better because of how young they were. And I just think it all comes together this year for Houston. They have the momentum, they have the hype, and the team who I think is probably the second scariest, Laura, is the Indianapolis Colts, a team you didn't even give mention to, or at least not significant mention. You have Anthony Richardson in his second year. Now, can he play for more than 8 quarters? Let's hope so. He definitely needs to be more responsible with the ball. But when he played, Laraib, he showed serious flashes of special, even passing the ball, which I thought was, a very poor part of his game or underdeveloped part of his game. I think a full year under Shane Steichen, who we saw brought the best out of Jalen Hurts when he was in Philadelphia, is now going to be going into the second year of the offense. You bring in a guy like Adonai Mitchell from the draft. You still have another year with Josh Downs and Michael Pittman Jr. on the outside. Jonathan Taylor, a full year, healthy, full offseason to get right. No contract disputes. So that's beautiful for them. And then defensively, they still have those studs, Buckner, and you have the secondary is probably the biggest question mark I have for this Indianapolis team. But, they've always had a good defensive identity over there. So that's a team I would really look out for. I am not betting on Will Levis whatsoever,
Will
Laura.
be thrilled.
And you can put all the hype on this offensive line that you want, but I saw them get killing Will Levis last year. And I like Skoronski from 2 years ago. JC Latham, still a bit of a wild card, They bring in your boy Lloyd Cushenberry from Denver, who I thought was a good get. And they just use that money in free agency. They Calvin Ridley, splash. L'Jarius Sneed, splash. But it all has to work, and it all hinges on Will Levis. So if he has a good sophomore jump, you could be cooking right now, Laraib.
And I
But at
believe
the
I
same
am, but
time, someone's got to be the worst team in the AFC. And I there's definitely a team in a division we'll talk about later who I think is the worst team in the NFL if we do get to them. But this Tennessee Titans team, I think, has better chances of finishing last in the conference than I do winning this division. And as for the Jaguars, I think I agree with you. I'm not in on them this year.
yeah, I mean, just another year of Doug Peterson, a head coach. You lose. I mean, you bring in Gabe Davis and you bring in Brian Thomas and Brian Thomas Jr. But you just don't feel anything of them moving another year forward with Trevor Lawrence. It doesn't feel like any momentum that they've gained, like the other three teams that we've talked about, where you can kind of feel the step up. Like you said with the Texans, all the people they brought in, you feel the step up for this Titans team. And then, of course, Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson coming back. You kind of feel the momentum that those teams have versus what the Jaguars have had. They'll announce on Instagram they're bringing back their throwback jerseys, but besides that, you don't really feel too much,
Which
going
which
in
is
their
crazy,
direction.
Larob, because around this time last year, they were sitting at, you know, the highest hype going in the division. Easy division win for them. No one thought anything of CJ Stroud or Anthony Richardson, and the Titans were in the mud. And we were like, this Jaguars team is going to run this division for the next 10 years. And there they were, 8-3, top of the conference. And then Lawrence gets hurt. So at this point, if we see a healthy Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas pans out to be an alpha number one, and you get good production out of Gabe Davis and this defense that was clicking towards the end, not really the end, but towards like the beginning of this season, then who knows? But as it stands now, you're right. This is a momentum league. And the way things are going, it feels kind of grim for the Jaguars, where it feels like stagnation. We need to see a huge leap from Trevor Lawrence this year to prove he's worth the money he got paid this offseason. And if he is that guy, well, he's the best quarterback in this division, including CJ Stroud.
It's a big, big ask out of Trevor Lawrence, who lost a great target in Calvin Ridley and doesn't really have much to work with this year on the outside. But, we'll see, Lewis. But I think you want to go ahead and move on to a division that you're really interested in.
Right, we're going polar opposites from AFC South, excuse me, to the NFC North, Larab, where we have what I think is going to be the most competitive division in all of football this season. I think you have two teams that are legitimately have Super Bowl hopes this year in the Lions and the Packers. And I think the Bears have legitimate playoff hopes this season with the talent and roster they have. And you can never count out Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings team that has legitimate talent on both sides of the ball. But I want to pose this to you, Laura. Do you think out of all the three teams besides the Lions, which team do you think has the highest chance to win this division besides the Lions this season?
I think it has to be the Packers, and that all really balances on Matt LaFleur. I know we see Jordan Love become one of the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, but I want to talk about Matt LaFleur and give him some of the props that he has not been shown, I believe, in the past two seasons since Aaron Rodgers left. While he was there with Aaron Rodgers, they go 13-3 in a couple of seasons and they're dominating. But the whole thing was, and why Aaron Rodgers was a little disgruntled, is because Matt LaFleur wanted to have his own system there in calling the plays on the offensive side of the ball. And Aaron Rodgers, as we know, really likes to call his own plays, his audibles at the line of scrimmage. And that was a little disconnect going on between the head coach and quarterback there. But now we've seen him take over the system last year and really start to man Jordan Love in a way that he likes. And towards the end of the season, we saw how well they were clicking. And now with Jordan Love another year, now the wide receiver room is kind of lacking a little bit. And that's why you might lean towards the Bears a little bit. But I think Matt LaFleur, another dark horse candidate for coach of the year, he has the ability to pull this Packers team to the first place in that division.
But let me ask you, would you still pick the Lions to win this division?
Based completely off of the talent of both teams, I'm still going to pick the Lions. Yes.
Yeah, so let me you that was a good job at the Packers, and I'll get to them in a second, but I think the Lions just I mean, based off the momentum from last year and where we think this team is headed, they seem like the shoe-in for this division. I mean, Jared Goff, he got a nice little extension this offseason. You extend Amon-Ra St. Brown, and this team is just all good vibes. There's no bad training camp drama or anything. And, the offensive line, just studs. You bring in some good additions. DJ Reader for that defensive line is only going to reinforce one of the weaknesses on their team, I would say. They had a really good draft. They bring in Terry Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw for the secondary. Those guys look like they can play early. And, because they had their biggest problems last year were stopping the run and their pass defense. And I think they really hit on those needs this offseason. They let Cam Sutton go, who was just a water hose in the NFC Championship game, just letting Brandon Ayuk run right by him. And they I feel like these young guys can really make impact plays. Brian Branch moving over to safety instead of nickel, I think is going to be an adjustment, but I think that's probably his best position in this defense. And yeah, I think the biggest thing that we thought for sure they were going to lose their offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, who is one of the highest pedigree of offensive coordinators and coaching candidates. But he decided to stay for another season, which is just a huge bonus for this offense with just another year. Jared Goff's always been the best when he has continuity with his offensive play caller and he has a constant system in place with good targets and a good running game. And they have both. You still have Montgomery and Gibbs in the backfield. You still have Monroe St. Brown. It's another year of Sam Laporta, who had a fantastic rookie season. And this offensive line is incredible. So there's no reason to think. My thing is, Laraib, when you look at predictions from season to season, what are the things that are transferable? What can we say? Turnovers are a weird thing that can flip seasons. Injuries are weird things that can flip seasons. But what are things that stay consistent season by season? It's quarterback play and it's trench play, offensive, defensive line, because that is what will generally make you successful in this NFL. They improve their defensive line and their offensive line. They added some more depth and is still the same solid unit they had last season. Ragnow, Penei Sewell, you still have those studs on that offensive line. So there's no reason to think this team should not be able to compete for a division again.
For sure.
However, my pick for this division,
Don't
as it
do it.
stands
Do
now,
not do it.
ooh, there's a bad man in Chicago right now, Laraib.
Do
Oh, his
not
name is
crown the
Caleb
prince before he becomes
freaking
the king.
Williams. Oh, man. Don't get me started. These Chicago Bears are my pick to win this division, Laraib. Just based on roster, okay? Let me take the quarterback out of it. You have probably the best receiver core in the division, and it's a really good receiver division. And I'm not going to ignore Minnesota, but at least from a 1 through 3, where you have Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, and DJ Moore, that's an insane group of wide receivers to walk into. Offensive line, Darnell Wright got a nice pay grade this offseason. They bring in some more guys. Still not a unit I'm totally sold on, but it's definitely better. DeAndre Swift in the backfield is an upgrade from what they had last season. And he looked like he had some juice last year. I thought he had a really good season last year with Philadelphia. They just kind of stopped running the ball in certain games. So I like that. And their defense, all 3 levels of the ball have ballers. Jalen Johnson, arguably the best cornerback in the entire NFL. You have Montez Sweat, who is just a huge difference maker for this defense. Now, when you think about a team who had the #1 overall pick in the draft, you'll think, oh, that roster had so many holes. They had so many problems. That's why they were picked #1. It wasn't their pick. It was the Panthers' pick. This roster won 7 games last year with awful quarterback play. And then you add in the X factor, Laraib, and that is Caleb freaking Williams, who all we've seen is good things from him and just the throws he's making in the preseason. The belief I have in him in this offense with Shane Waldron, a guy you're familiar with from his days in Seattle, for all the good things, right?
Mhm.
I have high hopes for what this offense can do. And the defense we saw with Matt Eberflus was the top scoring defense in the NFL from week 13 on. So they figured it out. Once they got Montez Sweat in the building, this defense was clicking on all levels. So I'm extremely optimistic for this Bears team. And I think this, fourth place schedule, young Jews going, I think they have a good shot this year, Laraib.
I definitely agree with your takes there that they have a good shot to win the division. But so you are penciling them in as the winners of the NFC North?
Pencil, not pen.
Okay. Okay, all right. Yeah. No, like very much like the division we were just talking about, the AFC South, we have a young rookie quarterback come in and kind of just take over. That's what a lot of these Bears fans and especially you are hoping for. But I just don't, like I said, you don't crown the prince before he becomes king. I want to see him go there in week 1 and really show me something like we
Well,
saw
good thing
CJ
he's
Stroud
playing
do.
your Tennessee Titans in week 1. So
And
who
Jeffrey
knows?
Simmons and D'Amico Autry are going to put him on his back all game long. That's going to be his welcome to the NFL moment in
Hey,
week
Super
1.
Bowl preview in week 1, Titans and Bears. Oh,
Don't get me started on
that
that.
sounds. And real quick before we move on, I want to give a shout out to this Minnesota Vikings team. Obviously, they lost JJ McCarthy for the season. No one really expected him to be a big part of this season anyway, but we know what Sam Darnold is in the NFL. I'm not going to try to think of, the tangibles and what he has. I've seen him play starting quarterback in this league. He's not the answer. So it felt nice thinking about this Vikings team as a transition into JJ McCarthy as he gets more time behind Sam Darnold. Obviously, that's not the case this year. So it's just going to be another year of really bad quarterback play for the Vikings, which sucks because you still have Jefferson. Jordan Addison was a great target for them last year, a budding star at receiver, and a defense under Brian Flores that I thought was really getting momentum and becoming a good unit last season. And I think they're still a team that can win 7-8 games and ruin some hopes for some of these teams in their division, but they don't have the upside of quarterback play that these other teams have, which ultimately I think will bring them back in the long run, Rob.
Yeah, it's going to be on Kevin O'Connell to have a lot of those design plays for Sam Darnold and, turn him loose, see what he can do. He wasn't in the best
Don't turn them
situation.
loose.
He wasn't in the best situation in New York and also, garbage time with the 49ers. And so, like you said, not a lot of high expectations for them. So if you can go out there, sling a couple balls here and there, we'll see what can happen against a couple garbage games later on this season, Lewis. But let's move on to something that I don't hear a lot of people talking about for this upcoming 2024 season, Lewis, and that is Tom freaking Brady coming back to the NFL, Lewis. He's back.
He's back
In the broadcast booth for Fox, doing all the big time games. And I think we're going to see a Romo-esque renaissance from Mr. Brady on Fox, which is going to be great for them. Now, Tony Romo in the last 2 seasons, I would say, has kind of fallen from grace in his broadcasting style. But I think Tom Brady's going to come in, bringing some new juice to this Fox team. Now, it kind of sucks. Greg Olson and Kevin Burkhardt did a great job ever since Troy Aikman and Joe Buck left. But I think Brady here is here to bring it back and do some good broadcasting this year.
Yeah, I'm excited for it, Laraib. I mean, let's look at what Tom Brady is. He's an insane competitor, an insane preparer. Anyway, he's insane with his preparation. And he's been attacking this like it's a season. He's been in the booth with Kevin Burkhardt doing preseason games. Just they're not putting those on TV. He's just kind of getting practice reps in with KB and that Fox crew. And he's just, learning all the guys, getting in reps, and he's attacking this like he would an NFL game. If anything I know about Tom Brady is he's putting his 110% effort and to be as good as he possibly can. And he has all the resources, all the backing of Fox and all their supporters. So I'm really excited for Tom Brady. And that just brings me to where we're going now in the NFL because there's so many more networks and games being on every type of platform you use. We have Peacock continue to do games, which we all loved from last season. Yay, Peacock. No one owns that. But then you have 2 games on Netflix on Christmas Day, which I think is going to be super exciting. On what do we call it? No, I don't forgot what it's called. 2 games on Netflix on Christmas, which is gonna be super cool. And then we have, week 1, which we'll get to in a few episodes, but Packers and The Eagles are playing in Brazil on Peacock. But you still have Amazon doing Thursday nights. And they're also, I think they're getting a playoff game this season as well, if I'm not mistaken. But a lot of intriguing stuff in terms of the networking that I'm excited for. Um, but yeah, I mean, I unfortunately Al Michael's still on that Thursday night football crew, but the primetime games are up. I've looked them over a few times. They look pretty solid. We have a lot of talented teams in the NFL, and obviously right now, if there's an Aaron Rodgers injury week 1, it could throw off the entire primetime schedule. So we never know how these things shake out, but it looks pretty solid looking at it from here.
Yeah, I mean the last thing, I will say last thing about this Tom Brady thing is we don't want to come in there and pull a Drew Brees, the second best quarterback of all time, who kind of had a not so great broadcasting career after having an amazing NFL career. But like you
Okay, well,
mentioned,
that was
Tom
different. He
Brady.
was he wasn't in the booth. He was doing the studio analysis, which everyone has 1 second to talk before they throw it to the ninth guy sitting in the panel that can barely squeeze in. Oh, if there's anything I'd love to get rid of is more people in the halftime show. Yes, let's get Gronk in there. He's our 10th. Anyway, go on.
Last thing I want to see is Tom Brady kind of fall on his face here, as a last memory from football. But I'm expecting great things out of him, Lewis. But let's go ahead and move on to your last thing that you want to talk about, all of the rookie quarterbacks coming into this year.
That's right, Laraib. There's a lot of excitement. We've already talked about 2 of them. Like I said, unfortunately, JJ McCarthy out for the year. He showed some promise in his first and only preseason game, though. So full rehab for him. I like the approach he's taking. Let's do the full long-term recovery, and let's make sure I have a long career here in Minnesota. They believe in me, and let's make sure that I am good for the rest of my career. It sucks that he won't be able to play this season, especially develop that rapport with a guy like Justin Jefferson, who just got paid and he's excited to be there. But we'll see that in the future. I have high hopes for him. But Laraib, what I've seen from all of these quarterbacks so far, I'm pretty excited about. So out of the 5 guys or 4 guys available, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, and I'm missing one. Penix, excuse me, Penix. I feel like I'm still missing one. Oh, Drake May, excuse me, Drake May. So out of those guys, if you were to rank just based off their rookie season, who is going to play the best versus play the worst? Who do you think is going to play the worst this rookie season?
Unfortunately, it has to be Herbert 2.0, aka Drake May, who I think is going to have the worst season. You look at all the supporting cast that all these young guys have. I think he has it the worst out of everybody. You're playing in New England, first of all. So that's already a minus right there. Then you look at all of his weapons. He's got nobody outside of Ramondre Stevenson. Now, Demario Douglas, he's gonna do some things. We'll see. You drop Juju Smith-Schuster out of nowhere because he's done. And then you have year 2 wide receiver from LSU, Keyshawn Boot, finally
The
coming out
gambler.
of the gambler, finally coming out of his suspension. And so he just doesn't have the supporting cast around him. And again, a first-year head coach, it's just going to be a really tough task for him to try to get through that, especially in that division.
Yeah, I agree. I just when you're looking at how these rookie quarterbacks are supposed to succeed, the biggest thing is the supporting cast, the coaching, and a big thing that I look at is the head coach. Because if you're a Patrick Mahomes and you go to a system where you sit behind Andy Reid or sit behind Alex Smith for a year, you have an established offensive elite head coach in Andy Reid, and you already have a Travis Kelce, a Tyreek Hill in the building. It's just like, wow, I'm already set up with great success around me. But New England, who has been able to draft a receiver in my lifetime, maybe some like Julian Edelman in late rounds, but they've just have not been able to hit a receiver at all. Just Gerard Mayo in his first year, I'm not bought in on Gerard Mayo whatsoever. He just is a guy who seems like he's a player first guy, but hangs his head too heavy on the defensive side. And that's another thing for rookie quarterbacks. If you have a defensive head coach, I'm already a little skeptical, and the only 2 guys who walked into offensive coaches were Bo Nix with Sean Payton and JJ McCarthy with Kevin O'Connell. So the rest of the guys are walking into defensive coaches, but what's the rest of the supporting cast? And these guys, I mean, Drake May could be 10 times the player of Bo Nix, but in that Patriot system, he's not going to be able to produce at all. So Drake, Stay healthy this season. Show some flashes. Don't get hurt, bud.
Yeah, but I want to move on to who I think is going to be the best quarterback in this draft. I don't have a feeling who you think it's going to be, but for me, in my opinion, I'm going Jaden freaking Daniels. Now, I know he's playing in a not so great team with some receiving assets that maybe not so great. 100-year-old Zach Ertz, 100-year-old Austin Eckler. They still have Brian Robinson Jr. They still have Terry McLaurin, and they still have Jahan Dotson. I
Do they?
think
Do they still have Jahan Dotson? I don't know if you've seen some of the reports, but he's likely to get cut
he's
from some of the
still
things I've
on
been
the
seeing.
team as of
Okay.
August 19th,
Shout out
6:37
Deami
p.m.
Brown.
So I think they have some good weapons for him. I think they're just going to turn him loose this season because they really don't have much to lose. And I think we see the most out of Jaden Daniels this year.
And that's my biggest fear. I think Jaden could have a more productive, and he could even win Rookie of the Year this season than Caleb Williams. I think he could have a better season, but I just can't wash my brain from what the Commanders did to Robert Griffin III and how special he was and just ran him into the ground. Jaden Daniels, the guy who's already has a pretty slim frame, runs into a lot of big hits, and is susceptible to injury in the NFL. And you already saw in the preseason game, he went down, he got tackled, and he looked right over at Dan Quinn, who was just pointing at the ground right when he came up. So it's definitely something he's going to work on. I love Jaden Daniels. Obviously, as an LSU fan, I think he has insane arm talent. If it wasn't for Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels is one of my favorite prospects in years as a quarterback. But I still don't trust the Commanders. I don't trust this receiving core. They're clearly just not the talent is there. The offensive line really didn't get helped at all. We saw Sam Howell get killed last season. Now, I think Jaden Daniels is obviously a better quarterback than Sam Howell, and he's going to be more productive, but they still have a long way to go in this division to make a difference. Whereas I think the roster that Caleb has around him, I'm not going to go into that any longer, but it's just a much better system to walk into, despite both walking into defensive head coaches. But the wild card I'd like to throw out there is Bo Nix, Laraib, because as a former Sean Payton believer, and I still believe in him, I'm just messing around, but I think what I've seen from the preseason so far, and the preseason means nothing. Do not put any stock in the preseason, but it is football. I'm watching players play football. Bo Nix has looked pretty solid. I like this. He's very sharp in his throws. He looks like a. I'm not gonna say young Drew Brees because that's extremely disrespectful, but just in the mannerisms and how he's going through his reads, he's finding the open guy. He's not necessarily trying to go for the crazy splashy plays, but if he needs to, he has shown so far he can make them. He's playing through the system. He's on time, on target, and Sean Payton is just raving about how successful he's been. And I liked what Sean Payton did last year. It looked like he was kind of turning around the offense. Was Russell Wilson had good games, but this guy is definitely more of a fit for Sean Payton's style of offense. And I think with Sean Payton, he could have a very successful year.
Yeah, as the oldest guy coming out of all the rookie quarterbacks, he definitely has the most experience. And if he's going to be thrown in a system with Sean Payton where he's able to get those design plays that he would have liked out of Russell Wilson, who was kind of, a statue when, Sean Payton might have been expecting someone who's a little bit more mobile. I think we see Bo Nix kind of also, let those legs stretch out a little bit in this Sean Payton system. But the issue is, of course, you don't really have the best receiving core outside of Cortland Sutton and Adam Troutman, or no, Greg Dulcich, fantasy tight end sleeper right there. But if we see a Javonte Williams come back from his injury from 2 years ago, I think this Broncos team could be a 6-win team, maybe 5.
Hey, I mean, we'll see. I actually am pretty excited about what Sean Payton can do with this Denver team this season. And just real quick, don't expect anything from Michael Penix this season. I mean, obviously, the Falcons, in their ideal world, he doesn't play this season because you have a full, healthy season from Kirk Cousins, who plays good football. But Michael Penix getting reps in, just not. If he hits the field, then we'll see. But I just really don't have a take on how he's going to play because ideally he will not play at all. So it is what it is. Laraib, go ahead and finish us off with your last biggest storyline.
We are going to start this season, Lewis, just like how we started last year with Aaron Rodgers and his take 2 with the New York Football Jets. And I know how much we both missed him on the field last year. but I want to see him come out this year with that same stash you got on your face. I
What's
want to
up?
see that on Aaron Rodgers week one, and I want to see him wheeling and dealing with this Jets team. I want to see him and Garrett Wilson air that thing out deep. I want to see Brees Hall be the number one fantasy running back this year off of checkdowns from Aaron Rodgers. And I want to see what this Jets fan base has been expecting for the past 20 years, and that's a playoff win. And I think they can do it. And I think Robert Saleh, who's been really discredited as this head coach of this Jets team, he's going to put on another defensive masterclass with all the players they have on the Jets side of the ball. And I'm expecting this New York Jets team to come in second place in the AFC East.
Look, I know the popular opinion is to go against what you're saying. Aaron Rodgers, he's old. He's washed. I mean, he's not going to get back to where he was. This Jets team, Robert Saleh, we don't believe in them. They're a chaotic franchise. The Jets will find a way to mess it up. But I agree with you, Laraib. I agree with every single
Give
point you
me
just
some of that
made.
ayahuasca, baby.
I agree. Aaron Rodgers. Look, can he just be better than Zach Wilson and Tim Boyle? Yeah, he will be better than them. Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall were looking electric last season with those guys at the helm. So Aaron Rodgers, if he can just stay healthy, please God, because all right, we're not big Aaron Rodgers fans, but we just want to see him play because he's a good quarterback. We want more good quarterbacking in the NFL, and he provides that. And I think if he could just get back to what he was his last year in Green Bay, when you can say he was kind of a disappointment, they still have an elite defense in New York. You don't have to worry about that. My biggest concern would be this offensive line, but you bring in Tyron Smith from the Cowboys, who had an amazing season last year for them, as old as he is, and then Olu Fashanu out of Penn State, their first round pick. Pretty solid preseason so far. He's looked like one of the best tackles so far in the preseason, and he's just a raw athlete. And if he can just make impact winning plays, Aaron Rodgers will be on his feet this offseason. Now, I do wish they would have gone out and got a real offensive coordinator, not kept freaking Nat Hackett. But, if Aaron Rodgers wants to run his offense the way he thinks it should be run, that's probably in your best interest. Laura, I think the Jets, I'm not, all right, this is just a conjecture. I think they could win the AFC East. I'm very high on this Jets team. And with Aaron Rodgers at the helm, this is a playoff football team.
I want to ask you, if you're ranking the AFC East teams, obviously the Patriots are on the bottom. But besides that, I mean, you and I both aren't really bought in on Tua, but how would you rank, just like you said, off for just conjecture?
See, it's really tough because the Bills lost a lot in their secondary, but I really like the direction they're going on offense, going for more of a ground and pound. James Cook, take the ball out of Josh Allen's hand. Not saying that you don't want Josh Allen to make mistakes and you're worried about that, but he's just putting his body in so much harm these past few seasons to take less responsibility off of him. I like this approach to the offense, but they're just a less talented team than they were last year. That's impossible to argue. They got worse on paper. And then Miami, you lose Christian Wilkins. You add a lot of guys on the fringes who were solid. They still have the talent. They have Tyreek Hill going into another season where towards the end, they just tail off. And I don't know if they're built for December football. It didn't feel like they addressed that. They got more speed. They bring in Odell Beckham. They stick with Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, the running backs. This will be a flashy team that puts up a lot of points in September and October. So as it stands now, Laraib, I think I like the Jets winning this division. Jets 1, Bills 2, Dolphins 3, and Patriots.
And I have to rock with the best quarterback in the division to win.
That's not a bad take. That's not a bad take.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Obviously, we both have valid arguments, but I think the Bills, like you mentioned, I think they still have a great offensive system with Josh Allen. And I understand where you're coming from with the ground and pound, but I think they have sneakily good weapons. I'm a huge fan of Curtis Samuel coming into that system. Just that great gadget guy who you can just hand the ball off to, and he is going to make something happen. And then Khalil Shakir, another guy I'm really high on. I think he's going to come into his third year and just take the top off defenses and sometimes even be the possession guy, but, kind of take over that Diggs role that they lost from the offseason. So my order would be the Bills, Jets, Dolphins, and of course the Patriots.
Yeah, I buy that. And I still do like a lot this Dolphins team has to offer. It wouldn't surprise me if somehow they ended up winning. The path for the Dolphins to have success with Tua as the quarterback is the 1 seed. If you don't have the 1 seed, you're going on the road to all these, AFC North crappy weather places where you're just not built for it. But if you can stay in Miami, that is the idea. So if they can really hit this regular season hard, go hard, try to win this division, that is their best path. But I just think from a talent perspective, I like the Jets as the best team in this division, Laraib.
Yeah, but
Well,
I
Laraib,
think
but no, go
that
ahead. Go ahead.
will wrap it up for our opener for the 2024-2025 NFL season. A lot of great takes from both of us, a lot of huge predictions on who's going to win what division, but this is just the beginning. Like I mentioned earlier, if you guys have some more comments, ideas for us, you ought to leave them down below in the comments. And of course, if you want to come on here and give us your takes, feel free to reach out or say something down in the comments, Lewis.
All right. Well, yep, that's going to do it. Thanks for tuning in. First and Goals signing out.
Peace.